a lot of times some of those first images that get shared
Mm.
end up being the ones that everyone kind of comments on and piles
Yes.
on to wish,
So true.
well wishes and congratulations. And those are the ones that get spread around the most from your day, like those first few. And so if those end up being those grainy, blurry photos or just those like not professional ones where you know that a lot of photographers within 48 hours or 72 hours are going to get you previews, I think couples might actually appreciate being able to share the professional sneak peeks
Right.
from your day and have those be the ones that everyone gets to see and comment and get excited about, as opposed to maybe like that grainy one that your great aunt shares that's
Yeah.
maybe
No, I
not
think you're spot
bringing
on.
that light, right?
Spot on. All right. I have Lynn, and I actually don't know how to say your last name, Lynn. So can you educate us on how to say that?
Yeah, my name is Lynne Reznick. Reznick with a Z.
Resnick.
Yep.
Good. It's actually not as hard as I thought. Okay. I apologize.
No worries.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am the owner of Lynne Reznick Photography. I do wedding photography and engagement photography for couples in upstate New York and throughout New England. And I went full time in 2017, but prior to that was part-time photographer and actually taught for 10 years high school history, and then was an educator for teachers in their classrooms as an instructional coach. And so made this shift partway through after my own wedding to become a photographer and did it as a side hustle. And now I've been, I guess we're going into 5, 6 years now, full time.
Wow, congratulations on that. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
So, let's actually talk about something that seems you're pretty passionate about, maybe this unplugged ceremony idea. Can you give us some information about what that is and maybe the benefits and issues that come along with it?
Absolutely. Yes. As a photographer, I think most other photographers would agree with me that they would also be excited about this concept too.
Yes. And I don't know if you know, I have a background in photography. So
Yes.
I've been a photographer for 15 years as well. So when you brought this up, I thought, perfect. Yes, let's talk about it, Lynn.
Right? Yes. So Unplugged Ceremony is basically, just to go over like what it is first. It's asking your guests, your family, your friends, everybody to put their cameras away, and these days that means cell phones too. Cell phones away for the ceremony. So nobody else is taking pictures or recording video except for your professional team that day. So your team of professional vendors, photographers, videographers, they're going to be the ones capturing those memories for you, and everyone else is just going to be focused on the ceremony itself and not trying to also like record or snap pictures. And that's
Right.
from the walk down the aisle to the recessional out, so through the whole kind of process from start to finish of the ceremony. And it's not those pieces before or after. So people will talk about like unplugged weddings,
Right,
and
right.
could potentially be the whole day where you're asking guests to not take any photos or record or anything. And this is really just the ceremony itself, like
Okay.
that moment. I like to focus on that part because I think asking for the whole day that's a lot to ask these days.
Yes, yes. I think you're so true, so true.
Right, in the world of social media, that's a long time to go without wanting to like post a picture of yourself or your
Right.
friends or capture some moments. But that solemn portion of the day where you're exchanging vows with your partner, it's that part of the day where you're asking people to put cell phones and cameras away.
Right, right. So, what are some benefits or why is it important to maybe consider this?
Yeah. So, as a photographer, first, I think we can talk about this because your professional team is going to love this because they're not going to have somebody leaning into the aisle and like blocking their
Mhm.
shot of you either during that first kiss or coming down. You're not going to have all those hands up with cell phones, right? Being the distraction for like a first kiss moment, those
Right.
kinds of everybody wants to get.
I think that what Lynn's saying is so true. There are so many times, like even in my personal social circle of photographers, that we share photos of guests, like in our little group, that were just kind of like a distraction and annoying. And oftentimes there are times when people actually ruin the shot for the professionals. So they get in the
Exactly.
way. It causes like awkwardness sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And those ceremonies have a lot of meaningful moments in them and unrepeatable moments. It's not
Right.
like we can be like, oh, hey, your grandpa got in the way during your first kiss. Do you mind just redoing your first kiss? Like, that's
Right.
mortifying as a professional. You'd never want
Right.
to ask that. And a lot of
But
times
it
you
does
can't
happen.
create it, but it does happen. And so that's why it's not just about us as professionals. Like, it's a bummer as a
Hmm.
professional to have to navigate around those things, but more so the reason that we get bummed out is for our couples, right? I
Right.
mean,
Right.
because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So if you really loved the professional photographer you hired, which I hope you do, or the video team, if you're not allowing them to get those shots or kind of helping to facilitate a clear view to those shots, you might end up disappointed in the gallery that they deliver in those parts of the day. And a
Right.
lot of times it's not necessarily in our control. Whereas this unplugged ceremony really allows you to get all those like favorite shots that you want unhindered.
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree.
and on the guest side too, I think you're giving your guests the permission to be fully present and to not feel like they need to get
Right.
those shots for you, or for themselves. We have professionals here. We're going to share the photos. They're going to be beautiful. A lot of times, especially in New England for me and upstate New York, we're inside a lot for ceremonies. So
Mm-hmm.
churches, or you just have to be inside because the weather permitting, you'll
Right.
have half of the time we're inside. So those dark churches they're not friendly for cell phones. You're going to
Right.
end up with like really grainy video or grainy pictures. Whereas the professional, if you just wait a little longer for those professional photos to come through and trust us with them, they're going to be a lot higher quality and you're going to be a lot more excited to ultimately share them in the end.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that too.
Yeah, so those are the reasons why I think photographers love them and couples should love this idea of going unplugged, because then you're looking back at smiling faces, your guests get to engage and actually hear your vows, they get to,
Hmm.
participate in those moments. They have free hands to like clap and cheer during your first kiss. You get those guest reactions of laughs and smiles or tears as people actually listen to the things that are happening during the ceremony, as
Right.
opposed to, did I get a shot, from this weird side angle 6 rows back of, trying to give those vows. So it really just helps people be more present and have a more intimate feel in the ceremony too.
Oh, 100%. Recently, I'm reading a couple books. It's the new year, and I'm like, oh, what can I do to be more connected this year? And that's pretty much the thing that comes up all the time. Be present. Everything I'm reading is be present in the moment. Don't be distracted. And this is a perfect example. It's like kind of the universe aligning in my world here too. Like, you're really making this a valid point for me personally. So, yeah, I think it's really important.
Yeah, yeah. And that ceremony, it is so special. And so being able to give guests that experience of being there with you and not having anything else to do, and knowing that you're going to have it captured. So the downside, I guess, or like the cons that you might talk about with
Right.
this, or thinking about it on the other side, it can be frustrating for guests who really want to share, right? Like
Hmm.
I
Well,
know.
actually, on that note too, sometimes I get a little bit surprised that guests share content
Mm,
from somebody's special wedding day before the couple even knows or like kind of gives permission, and the couple doesn't ever see it. I don't know. It's kind of strange to me in a way, right? Like it's your day and there's going to be something people might not know, that maybe it's a private ceremony or maybe not some people were invited. It's like some other stuff that goes into it too. So that's another reason to potentially have it unplugged as well, I guess. It's your private day and I guess it's just something to consider.
yeah. And it's such a good point too, even if you are okay with things being
Right.
shared, right? Because I think a lot of people are these days. It's just kind of that social sharing
Right.
environment.
Just the
But
norm.
even if you are okay with that, a lot of times some of those first images that get shared end up being the ones that everyone kind of comments on and
Yes.
piles on to wish,
So true.
well wishes and congratulations. And those are the ones that get spread around the most from your day, like those first few. And so if those end up being those grainy, blurry photos, or just those like not professional ones where that a lot of photographers within 48 hours or 72 hours are going to get you previews, I think couples might actually appreciate being able to share the professional sneak peeks
Right.
from your day, and have those be the ones that everyone gets to see and comment and get excited about, as opposed to maybe like that grainy one that your great aunt shares.
Yeah.
That's maybe
No, I
not
think you're spot
bringing
on.
the best light, right?
Spot on. But let's
um,
talk about those cons. I
yeah,
interrupted you during that
well,
moment.
one of them is you do have to wait at least a little bit
Yeah.
longer, right, to get those professional photos, because you won't have anyone else who's taking those sly ones on the side.
Right.
So 48 to 72 hours for, I think, a lot of photographers, but then there's also plenty of photographers who have a different workflow. They might need a week or more, or maybe
hmm
they don't share previews. So that's something to just check with your photographer about, and with your team about, if you're going to go unplugged, like when will you get some sneak peeks from the day that you might be
Right.
able to share, because you're not going to have that immediate like ceremony shot.
Not as much immediate gratification, that's for sure.
Right, right. So that's one thing to think about. And I think just the other one is, again, like family members feeling maybe offended. So it's all about how you
Mm.
present this, but you have that risk of maybe upsetting guests or offending them if they're like surprised by this, didn't know it was coming, and
Right.
are really big into photos. I mean, I get my love of photography from my grandfather and my mom, and she was not happy. Like, you have a photographer daughter, but at my brother's wedding, she was still like, well, I'm taking one. And I was like, Mom, you're going to follow the rules, because
Right.
like, I'm here to tell you, as your daughter, who's also a photographer, that you should know better. Just put your camera, like put your camera phone away and be the mom of the groom, like for my
Right.
brother. Pay attention, let the professionals do their job.
Yeah. So do you have any recommendations about how this could be communicated? If a couple did want to do a unplugged ceremony, how can they communicate it in the best way as to not offend? And then also, when you said that, the first thing that came to mind is like, ensure all your guests will be able to see the photos. Like, give them that confidence, because that's what it probably is. Like, mom was thinking, like, what if I don't ever get to see the photos, or it's on an online gallery and I don't know how to use it? Something like that. I mean, do you have any other tips?
Yes, absolutely. So I think the best way to spread this news, to make sure that everyone actually hears it, knows about it, and like puts their stuff away, is in the moment at the ceremony
With
itself,
the minister.
before it starts. Yeah, have the officiant make an announcement. That's going to be your best way to make sure that everyone is actually following it and can't claim that they like didn't know or didn't hear.
Right.
Everyone's seated before you walk down the aisle, have the officiant make a brief announcement and explain it. And we can actually talk about wording too, so that it's not offending
Right.
anybody. But beyond that, I think early, for those important family members who are going to be excited and may want to like take photos, is a really good thing to do, and in multiple places. And so that can include your ceremony program, like making a
hmm
note of the
Ooh,
name of
yes.
right in the program, signs at the back of the ceremony or at the back of the
hmm
church that just explain like we're going unplugged, and to put your phones and cameras away, so that they have a sign that's there, they have it in their program. You may even put it on your wedding website. A lot of couples do those wedding planning
Yep.
websites now. And that's a great place to put it, so that you're letting people know what it is, why you're doing it. And that's something they're checking ahead of time, right? For that like hotel information and
hmm
to see photos and stuff like that. So that's a good spot to put it, and start letting them know ahead of time, so they can kind of get used to this idea that they're going to have to put that away, and that you're doing this. And those are opportunities to like share in the program and on the website in a little more detail, right? About not only what it is, but like why it matters to you and why it's going to be good for them.
Right. Yes, I think that's important. So there's no hurt feelings, like you're saying, you're actually doing it for them. Like really,
It's
really
for
encourage, like, I
everyone's
really want you to feel the feels.
exactly, to be fully present, to share in those moments, to see smiling faces. It's like all of that stuff. And if you explain it in those ways,
hmm
that it's about being able to enjoy the ceremony more fully and be more present for the ceremony, and that you're going to end up with those memories, like of their faces smiling and yours as the couple, not their cell phone in the way, right, of their
Right.
face as you walk down the aisle or as you do your first kiss.
hmm
That's going to really help people kind of get on board with the concept, I think.
Yeah, totally. You mentioned specific wording.
Yeah, yeah.
Do
So
you have specific wording?
I do. I actually have like a one pager, or like
Okay.
a couple pages, so I can share that with your audience too, just so
Yeah,
that they can
that's
like
perfect.
download it and get like the full copy that they can use. So I have like two different versions, a long and a short. It basically says something like, we have hired, wonderful professionals to capture these moments for us. And we want to invite you to put your cell phones and cameras away and be fully present with us as we exchange our vows today. That's like something along the lines of the short version. And
Right.
there's a lengthier one where you can kind of explain it as well.
Cool. So the other thing that kind of comes to mind, because we focus on a lot of micro weddings and small weddings here. I'm sure where you are, it's maybe a bit more traditional, larger events. But one thing is too that this is a really kind of for the smaller weddings and stuff, is that I'm kind of going to go back to that guest count thing. It's like a very almost exclusive. The guests were picked on purpose, and this is just another way to kind of extend that on purpose feeling, is like, you were here, we want you here. We don't necessarily always want the world of social media. I know that I'm kind of elongating on what we already talked about, but you're just kind of like making me think of all these things that some people might not think about now, but they might think about after, and it's already too late potentially, or something, I
Yeah,
guess.
no,
So
I love that. Like the micro wedding definitely became a trend.
right.
The pandemic in 2020, that's all I shot were micro
Hmm.
weddings. And we've definitely gone back in the other direction up here in New England a little bit over the last year. But with those more intimate weddings and that more intimate feel, I think you have more impact in either direction.
Right.
So having those phones out, if you only have 15 people, that's going to be even more impactful on the moment
Right.
and a loss of connection in the moment.
Hmm.
And then putting them away is going to make even more of an impact in that positive connection way, because it's only 15 faces. So you're not going to be lost in a crowd and able to kind of get away with, snapping photos and not really being present. And it's going to
Yeah.
be more noticeable.
Yeah, and then one other thing that I could suggest, if you do go unplugged, which I would recommend, but I also eloped and no one was there. And this is my biggest regret, is that I didn't have a videographer. And I do think that there are times that, I have an idea of the words that I said during my ceremony, and I have an idea of the words that the minister said. But it would have been nice to have somebody there that was capturing it. Just like having a professional photographer, the videographer is going to have proper audio and proper angles and have the right edits and the cuts and the B-roll. And so anyway, that would be my other little tip.
Yeah, well, and your vendor team, right, of professionals, if you do have both photo and video, which I think is great,
Mhm.
you're already looking at that team, those two teams trying to coordinate together
Right.
and not get in each other's way and step on each other's toes. And so you're going to help facilitate something better for both
Right.
teams if your guests are kind of focused in on
Wrangled in.
and being fully present, right? Having that third person jump out into the aisle with you or like leaning out, those kinds of things, it just makes it that much harder for those two teams to
Yes.
to coordinate.
100%. 100%. So anything else you'd like to add about unplugged ceremonies?
The only other thing would just be, that it's just a small part of the day. So
Yes.
keeping that in mind and maybe helping people along and thinking about it that way, like you can have your phone out to take those detail shots. You can share after. You're going to have all those other moments captured, maybe like on cell phone stuff. And you can do your wedding hashtag and still have people do all those other ways of sharing through the cocktail hour and the first dance and like all those other moments. This
Hmm.
is a really small portion of the day, but it is also the one maybe with the most gravitas. And it's the reason you're there,
Right.
right? For that joining of the two of you. So keeping that something that's a little bit more protected and professionally
Right.
preserved and captured, I think is a really nice way to think about it. And then letting that everyone else have that fun and that free for all through the rest of the day.
Yeah, I think that
Not
that's
giving anything up, I don't think.
yeah, I think that that's a great way to kind of like balance it out for your guests too. Just reminding them that our ceremonies that we typically do are, very short. So they're 15, 20 minutes at most. But I mean, even longer traditional ceremonies are an hour, right? Or something. So it's not that big a deal
Yeah,
for the
we're
guests.
we're usually around like 30 minutes, even with a
Right.
full, right? Or maybe a Catholic mass or something like
Right.
that, a little bit longer. But for the most part, it's 30 to 45 minutes of your day or less. that you're talking about, like really putting that away and being fully present for, and then you're just giving everyone permission to get back to like all the fun of sharing and posting and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
it's very intentional.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Cool. Well, Lynn, tell us where we can find out more about you and actually see your work.
Absolutely. Yeah. I am at Lynne Reznick Photo on Instagram. That's where I'm showing up the most. And my website is lynnresnickphotography.com. So those are the places you can find me.
Do you travel?
I do. I do. Well, I'm in very upstate New York, Plattsburgh, New York. So basically on the Canadian border,
Okay.
and travel back to Boston and Cape Cod for most of my weddings and work and kind of throughout the New England area. But then would love to get out to Vegas or wherever people want to take me. So
Yeah.
happy to do that.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, it's been so fun learning about unplugged ceremonies today. I personally learned a lot because I just kind of assume people know about it. But after talking with you a bit more, I think it's something that's often overlooked. Like, it's not something that the first thing, like, oh man, I'm planning my wedding. I'm going to have an unplugged ceremony. No, that's not the first thing on your mind. But these are the little things that make a big impact on your day that you plan kind of later in the process. And just kind of making these intentional decisions really can have, like I said, a pretty big impact on your day. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's almost something like people might stumble across on Pinterest
right.
from
Hmm.
the signage and things like that of the day, as opposed to really thinking about first and foremost. So I love being able to share about it because I do think it's a better experience for everyone if you
I
do
think
it.
it's a better experience, but it's not for everybody
It's
necessarily.
true.
But
It's true. And some
from
people love actually having like lots of documentation. So if that's something you love, you shouldn't do it because you're going to be missing out on
right,
that.
right, right. If that's what you love, totally do it. So, anyway, thanks so much, Lynn. Appreciate you joining us today.